Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says walk the talk. What is the context? Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently addressed the virtual global investor roundtable. In this particular backdrop, let us try and understand what is this virtual global investor meeting, what have been the various steps taken by the government of India to encourage foreign investors into India, what have been the various concerns and what should be the way forward when it comes to addressing these concerns. First up, what is this virtual global investor meeting? This was organized by the Ministry of Finance and the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund, the Government of India. So what does it do? This particular meeting provides a platform. Platform for whom? Platform for the global institutional investors, Indian business leaders, the decision makers from the Government of India and the financial market regulators as well. It also consists of the Union Finance Minister, Union Minister for State for Finance, RBI Governor and other dignitaries. So what will they do? Basically, they will all come on a common platform. There are a couple of stakeholders who will have a vision for India's economy. So they will discuss about India's economic and investment outlook, structural reforms that has to be initiated by the government of India and the government's vision to pile up the Indian economy to about 5 trillion US dollar economy. So basically, this is a multi-stakeholder approach where all these people come together to envision a growth for the Indian economy. So the event provided an opportunity to all the global investors and the Indian business leaders so that they can directly interact with the policy makers from the government of India so that all the loopholes, all the lacunae areas and deficiencies in the system is addressed and reforms are brought about when it comes to the Indian economy. Now the question is, what was the highlights of this meeting? So what was addressed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi? Prime Minister Narendra Modi pitched India as the ideal destination for the foreign investments, which means he says that the government of India has provided a simple tool and formula of democracy, demography, demand as well as diversity. So what is democracy? We are a people who are electing the representatives. So the people have the will as well, and we also provide the stable government which he says has been provided by the democracy. So the institutional investors from other countries have a right platform to invest in India. He speaks about the demography. So what is this demography? This is about the youth population. This is about the employment opportunities. This is about the skill labor as well. Since we have the highest demographic dividend in India, when people actually invest in India, they would be provided with skilled labor, says the Prime Minister of India, followed by demand as well. India has the second highest population when it comes to the world, which means we have a huge consumer base. So what we will have? We will have the demand when it comes to the consumers as well. So the minute there is a foreign company investing in India, what it also drives is the consumer base with respect to the demand as well. And we also have the diversity. So all the foreign companies making investment in India will be able to derive advantages because of it. So in order to give boost to this, what we require is the infrastructure development. So the government of India has come up with what is called as the National Infrastructure Pipeline. So what is this National Infrastructure Pipeline? Basically, the government wants to make sure that it is investing as much as $1.5 trillion into the Indian economy. So what is this $1.5 trillion? So basically, this will make sure that there is upgradation of the infrastructure, whether it is in the form of roadways, whether it is in the form of railways, whether it is metro, whether it is waterways, airports across the length and breadth of the country. So what this will give is a boost to the infrastructure so that companies will be able to operate without any obstruction. And at the same time, in order to give a boost to the ease of doing business, the government has taken couple of steps when it comes to India. So what are these steps taken by the government of India in order to bridge the gap and increase the ease of doing business. Basically, we have the one nation, one taxation system. So all the confusion that was prevalent in the earlier taxation regime, overlapping jurisdictions and multiple taxations have been reduced because of the one nation, one tax, and that is in the form of GST. Since we have introduced GST, since we have one of the lowest corporate tax rates, since we have given incentives for the manufacturing sectors, and there was increasing chances of corruption as well when it comes to the income tax. So what we now have is the faceless regime for the IT assessment, and at the same time the government of India has also come up with the labor reforms recently as well. All these factors bring in what is called as a commitment to the ease of doing business as well. The government of India has also come up with a couple of programs and schemes. So what are those? This includes the production linked incentive system. So this production linked incentive system is also given to the manufacturers, let's say recently with respect to the electronics domain, so on and so forth, to couple of other sectors in India. Since all these measures have been taken by the government of India to give a boost to the Indian economy and also to encourage foreign investors to come to India and make their investment. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says India is the ideal destination for the foreign investors to make their investments in India. Now the question that we have to understand is, why is this meeting very important when it comes to India? RBI in the past has said that investment when it comes to India has gone into a contraction mode. Why contraction mode? Even before COVID-19, there was not much of investment when it comes to India. Why was there no investment? That is because there was a constricted demand when it comes to the market. And at the same time, we had the non-performing assets as well. It had increased over a period of time. Banks were little reluctant to give loans to these type of investors. So as a result, what we had seen was contraction when it comes to the investment. And at the same time, COVID-19 hit us all very badly and people started saving as well. Demand was also comparatively less, and all that means is that we have entered a phase of slow investment, slow demand, and ultimately it is the country which is suffering as well. And when all these type of issues start happening, what we have is the government which usually steps up the tempo. So when we have drop in the demand, when we have drop in the investments, who supports the infrastructure, who supports the growth factor? It is the government. But what is happening with the government is the widening fiscal deficit. Why widening fiscal deficit? That is because of the COVID-19 issue. That is because of the border standoff. That is because of the revenue shortfall. And all this means that the government is still not able to make investments in the market. And as a result of all these issues that is surmounting on the Indian economy, we need all the stakeholders coming up together, discuss how we can rejuvenate and ignite the passions when it comes to the Indian economy. So basically, we are making sure that all these loopholes that are present are addressed. How? By bringing all the stakeholders on a common platform. Only when we know what are the problems that are surfacing in the Indian economy, we would be able to come to a conclusion and address all these key issues and bring about reformation in the system. So another important factor we have to understand is that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken about all these ease of doing business and measures, but there is a small problem area. What is a small problem area? We speak about welcoming the foreign companies, but we are engaged in what is called as Atmanirbhar Bharat. If we are so becoming the self-reliant India, why would foreign companies want to invest in India? Further, we speak about ease of doing business, but we continue to tax foreign companies retrospectively. That is the example of the Vodafone case, and we have violated the bilateral investment treaties as well. We speak about the faceless IT regime, but there is corruption which is still not under check as well. We speak about single window transfer, but there is regulatory excess that is always haunting the companies as well. So there are a couple of regulatory problems when it comes to India, and that is also haunting the companies as well. Investors in all these cases don't look at what is being said, but they look at what is the ground reality. So the investors in this particular case look for the regulatory certainty. They look for the assurances from the government at the ground level, not only by words, but this also has to be implemented in action. So what this article says is walk the talk. So it is not only about projecting India that it is so and so, but this has to be implemented in practical reality, says this article. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says strategic comfort with Maldives. India has always believed in promoting regional peace and economic integration when it comes to South Asia as part of its neighborhood first policy. But there was a dramatic rise of China. What did China do? It was found to be assertive, it was found to be aggressive, and this had resulted in a huge challenge for India. Why? Because they have entered into the domain and territory of India. India is believed to have a stable control when it comes to South Asia, but since China is using its economic clout, this had become a grave tension for India as well. So one region that China had captured with its economic clout was Maldives previously. So Maldives had drifted away from India, was sitting on the lap of China under the regime of Yamin. Therefore, under the rule of Mr. Yamin, Maldives entered into a free trade agreement with China. This was conducted in spite of criticism from the people of Maldives, and because they had entered into a free trade agreement, China's Maritime and Silk Road Initiative was also supported by the Maldivian government under the regime of Mr. Yamin. Just when we thought it was going tough for India, we had the establishment of Sole government, which has been friendly with respect to India. Now we have the visit of Foreign Secretary from India, Harshavardhan, to Maldives, which is significant for taking forward the bilateral relationship. In this particular backdrop, let us try and understand how India has helped Maldives in the past. India and Maldives have had bilateral relationship that have been established for centuries together. When there was an attempted coup against the President Maumoon Abdul Gayoom, it was India which helped during the 1988. What exactly happened? There was a group of about 80 to about 100 people from the People's Liberation Organization of Tamil Illam. They wanted to organize a coup in the year 1988. They infiltrated the country, they entered into the capital Malé, and these militants spread out, seized key areas in the city, and attempted to overthrow President Maumoon Abdul Gayoom. That is when he sent an SOS to the Indian Prime Minister. That is when Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi supported this call of the President of Maldives. So he immediately sent paratroopers, navy vessels, restored the legitimate leadership under what is called as the Operation Cactus. So kindly remember, this was an operation initiated by India to prevent the coup that was taken up by some of the militants from Sri Lanka, all because they were backed by a Maldivian businessman, Abdul Latufi. So kindly remember, the first coup in the Maldives was stopped because of the help from the Indian administration. Then back in the year 2004, we had the devastation of the tsunami as well. Number of countries were impacted. Maldives was impacted. Sri Lanka, India was also impacted as well. So back then, drinking water crisis had exasperated when it comes to the Maldivian people. So what does India do? India immediately sends the drinking water facility as a humanitarian gesture. Further, we have the Maldivian students who come to India. They also study in the Indian educational institutions. We have patients who come to India. Why? Because it is cost effective and it is comparatively cheaper in India. And we have also established a liberal visa-free regime, that which has been extended by India both for the students as well as for the patients. And when the world was stuck with COVID-19 disruption, India also provided about $250 million so that they would be able to take care of themselves. Why? When you look at their economy is mostly based on tourism, and since tourism was hit very badly, that is why India also had to support Maldives when it comes to giving this economic sanction as well. So these have been some of the instances where India has helped Maldives to overcome all the issues when it comes to their economy as well as other disturbances. But we have a small concern here. What is the concern? The government right now is established by Mr. Sole. He is the president of Maldives as well, but there are small concerns when it comes to the opposition political parties and the previous dispensation. We have Mr. Yamin, who is currently sentenced to about 5 years of imprisonment. Why? Because he's been arrested on the charges of money laundering case. But his party, his people are also obstructing to India's presence when it comes to Maldives. They have raised a couple of camps as well. They have started campaigns of India out campaign, and they have also said that all the helicopters given by India and the operational military personnel present in Maldives should be immediately vacating Maldives is the call given by the opposition parties and all those regimes supporting Mr. Yamin as well. And at the same time, we also have the Solé administration, which they say have been selling the national assets to a foreign country. So this is in reference to India indirectly. Apart from external turmoil because of an opposition political party, there are issues within the government as well. Mohammad Nasheed happens to be the ex-president of Maldives. So he is also the speaker of the parliament. He currently says that there are a couple of people within the government who have massive charges of corruption. So these corruption charges, if they are proved by the speaker, this can actually create an instability when it comes to the government formation. And at the same time, he is also rooting for the parliamentary system away from the current presidential system, which can again destabilize the entire government machinery as well. So in order to make sure that this Solé administration is intact, there are no key differences, and India and Maldives relationship goes on a fruitful manner. We have the foreign secretary going and speaking to the Maldivian president as well as with the speaker as well. So what we have to understand is previously we had one of the regimes which was close to China and India was completely neglected, and we had the establishment of the Solé government, and this government is comparatively closer to India. And in order to make sure that this approach is carried forward, the strategic comfort of India first policy of the Solé government is comforted and it is encouraged and strengthened. What we have is the foreign secretary visiting Maldives in the present scenario is what this article all about. It is this that we have to understand with reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about COVID-19, climate and carbon neutrality. So when you look at this particular article, you can break them into three different compartments. One, it speaks about COVID-19 and how environment and health have to be integrated. Then it speaks about the impact of the climate change, and finally it ends its talk with respect to carbon neutrality. History, as we all know, is divided into before the common era and common era. Now with the COVID-19, the world is categorized into before COVID and after COVID. The virus has put a pause button on the massive economic growth, and it is making the policymakers think of new models of development. It is now important for us to view environment with an integrated approach to health. So the first important factor is considering that environment and health are two sides of the same coin. In case we disturb the environment, what we will have is the impact on the health, says the author of this article. First, we have to understand is that when it comes to the COVID-19, yes, it is a health issue, but what led to this is excessive greed, need, and to feed the larger population of the humankind. So nature and humans usually have a healthy relationship. When this equilibrium is disturbed, nature gets furious and balances the act of ignorance of the humans by creating a chaos so that the balance is restored in the nature. So what we have done, we have entered the forest areas, taken away the homes of the animals. This has resulted in loss of the biodiversity, and at the same time there is environmental problems like air pollution, water pollution, chemical contamination, deforestation, waste generation and accumulation, and land degradation. So whenever we have haunted the nature and we have impacted the environment in a negative way, this has resulted in a problem on the health sector. This has resulted increasing cases of health issues, morbidity and mobility, and all this has resulted is taking action fast so that this can be comparatively reduced. So what we require is an understanding of ecology and environment and its impact on us simultaneously. You cannot completely segregate and look them in silos, but what we require is an integrated approach. So whenever you harm the environment, you will have an indirect impact on the health, and that is an angle what the author wants to be considered. The next important factor is with respect to climate change. So what is it about climate change? Climate change has increased in the last couple of years due to anthropogenic factors, which has resulted in certain uncertainties as well. The uncertainties in the form of monsoon, the frequency of extreme events, the retreat of the Himalayan glaciers, and the increase in the mean sea levels as well. This is where the government under the Ministry of Earth Sciences has come up with a report called as Assessment of Climate Change over the Indian region. So what is this particular report all about? Basically, let's say for example, there is one of the technology that is introduced by the government or a company. This in the present scenario may be able to fight the climate change or any of the environmental issues as well. This alone is not to be considered, but its impact 10 years down the lane and the contextual linking with respect to other harmful effects will also have to be considered. Let me give you a simple example. We have the hydrofluorocarbons. This was seen as a panacea to fix the depletion of the ozone layer. But when we have started using this hydrofluorocarbon, there was the global warming potential which was comparatively increasing as well. So any innovation when it comes to the science and technology should not be a problem in some other area, and that is what needs to be looked, says this Ministry of Earth Sciences assessment and the report. Next, the author considers what is called as the carbon neutrality. So what is this carbon neutrality? Let's say for example, in a particular region or in a particular country, there are about 10,000 tons of units of carbon that is emitted. So the emission will have to be neutralized by absorption in the form of carbon sinks. So emission and reduction should happen simultaneously so that there is neutrality when it comes to the carbon emission. That is what is called as carbon neutrality. So according to the author, we have the American state of California, which is aiming to come up with the carbon neutrality factor by the year 2045. Then we have countries like China, which is planning to become carbon neutral by the year 2060. We have the European Union, which is planning to become carbon neutral by the year 2050. We have Japan and South Korea, which are also planning to become carbon neutral by the year 2050. So when we have all these countries and states planning to become carbon neutral, India should not come behind the curtains. India should also follow a similar policy of entering the mode of carbon neutrality, says the author of this article. We cannot always hide behind the fact that our per capita emissions will continue to be low, but instead we have to take the responsibility of becoming carbon neutral in the next couple of years, says the author in this particular case. Yes, the government of India is intending to make India a 5 trillion economy, but at the same time, economy is not all. It is the health also that matters. It is the environment that also matters. When we are looking at the GDP, the G here should not stand for the gross domestic product, but instead it should stand for the green domestic product, says the author of this article. So the post-COVID-19 world is not only about growth and development, it is about sustainable development, and all the ecological pluses, negatives should have to be considered. They have to be weighed each other, and we have to make sure that there is sustainable development, says the author of this article, when it comes to this particular issue. It is this that we have to understand with reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is drawing a comparison between the Election Commission of India, the Federal Election Commission of United States of America. How election is conducted, what are the different tools has been explained in yesterday's CNA, and we have also discussed in the past as well. Currently, what we are focusing is drawing a comparison between the Election Commission of India and the Federal Election Commission of the United States of America. When it comes to powers of the Election Commission of India and the Federal Election Commission of India, the Election Commission of India has a comparatively higher power than what is accommodated to the Federal Election Commission of United States of America. While we look at the Election Commission of India, it is the custodian of the electoral roll, all the matters related to keeping the roll updated, and it has been given a massive power for conduction of elections as well. It is able to recruit people, it is able to make sure that all the people have the right to vote as well. It is making sure that political parties are not meddling with the affairs of the Election Commission. So all this is the power that is given to the Election Commission of India. So it has huge powers when compared to the Federal Election Commission of United States of America. And now when we considered the Federal Election Commission of United States of America, it is confined to federal campaign finance regulations alone. Now, when it comes to conducting of elections, we know for the fact that India is a union of states, and when it comes to United States of America, it is a federation of states. So, United States of America has a federal setup, which means each state conducts its own elections in its own way. There is no centralized election management body like the Election Commission of India. So the Election Commission of India will conduct the elections both for the center and the state elections. That is not the same when it comes to the Federal Election Commission of United States of America. So who has more powers? Once again, it is the Election Commission of India. The complexity of the election process and the multiplicity of authorities is a perfect breeding ground for confusion when it comes to the Federal Election Commission of United States of America. That is not the same when it comes to India. We have one single cut authority, and that is the Election Commission of India. There is no other authority which will interfere with its conduction of the activities. But when it comes to United States of America, there is multiplicity of authorities. Further, when you look at the Federal Election Commission, it consists of about 6 members. So these 6 members again can be divided into 3 members and 3 members. So the 3 members are from the political party Republicans, and the other 3 members are from the political party Democrats. So there is equal sharing of the people when it comes to the Federal Election Commission, and this has to be confirmed by the Senate as well. So a decision, whenever it has to be taken, it will require a majority vote, and that is 4 when it comes to the Federal Election Commission. So what we see in this particular picture, the composition has representatives from the political party. But when it comes to the Indian commissioners, they are not from any political party and they have no affiliations whatsoever. But when it comes to the Federal Election Commission, it consists of 6 members, 3 each appointed by the political parties, which are 2 in number, and they have 3 people appointed by the 2 political parties. And the most important of all, during the course of the election, when elections are being conducted, when it comes to United States of America, they do not have any appeals when it comes to the Federal Election Commission. And when it comes to India, any issues with respect to the conduction of the elections, the political parties approach the Election Commission of India, and that is not the same when it comes to the United States of America. In fact, when you look at the judiciary does not interfere when elections are being conducted in India. But in the present scenario, when you look at United States of America, President Trump says that he is heading to the Supreme Court. Such is the difference when it comes to India as well as America, is what we have to understand with reference to this article. For the rest of the election process, how does it work? We have discussed in our yesterday's CNA, so kindly look into it. Now let's look into the next article. This article says India and Biden. This article basically speaks about approach that could be initiated by Biden and his administration, both in terms of the foreign affairs as well as his internal governance as well. So what is this article all about has been explained in our day before yesterday CNA. Whether he'll be coming back to the Paris Climate Accord or he'll be completely withdrawing will have to be wait and watched. There is Iran nuclear negotiations as well. Under the Obama administration, they had entered into the Iran nuclear negotiations, but Trump administration withdrew from this negotiation. So will they come back or not? Again, they have to be watched. The Afghan pullout will not have any changes when it comes to its policy. Why? Because as we discussed day before yesterday, in fact, Mr. Biden was also supportive of United States of America withdrawing from Afghanistan as well. On China, whether he'll be asserting assertive? Will he continue forward the legacy of Trump as well? All this will have to be wait and watch. These are some of the areas when it comes to the international angle. And when it comes to India, India will also have to watch closely when it comes to its economy, whether GSP status will be given back to India, and there are other frictional areas between the government and United States of America with respect to human rights, Jammu and Kashmir issue, Citizenship Amendment Act, and these areas could lead to friction between the Joe Biden administration and the present government, says this article. So what is this has been explained in our day before yesterday's CNA. So kindly look into it. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. Consider the following statements with respect to criminal contempt. There is no requirement for the Supreme Court to take Attorney General's consent in initiating a criminal contempt proceeding. Fair criticism of judicial act is no contempt. When a statement is made against a judge as an individual, contempt can be initiated. Which of the above statements is or correct? The answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Why? Because the third statement is wrong. That is because in case you have to make a criticism of that particular judge as an individual, any person would be able to do so, but this cannot be done as a judge of a Supreme Court or as a judge of a High Court. So what do we mean by it? Let's say, for example, if there is a judge, the judge is violated certain personal acts, he has conducted an activity as a personal capacity, then you might be able to criticize the move of that particular judge and this will not be contempt. But if he is acting as a judge, if he has passed a particular judgment, if you are criticizing this particular judge is acting in the form of a Supreme Court office, that is when contempt can be initiated. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Hingarabari Reserve Forest is in the state of, is it in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Assam or Mizoram? The answer to this is Assam. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, this is in the state of Assam, and also remember this is a 620 hectare forest called as Guwahati's lungs. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to adoption of children, which of the following statements is or incorrect? It is asking for the incorrect statement. Single female or male is eligible to adopt a child of any gender. In case of a couple, the consent of both spouses shall be required. Couples with 2 or more children shall not be considered for adoption. The answer to this is 1 and 3 only. Why? Because if it is a single female, she would be able to adopt a male or a female child. But when it comes to a male, he can only adopt a male child. Option 3 is also wrong because it is not 2 or more children. Instead, it is 3 or more children. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Why? Because we are celebrating the World Adoption Day. The World Adoption Day is observed every year on November 9. It promises to raise awareness about international adoptions or orphan children world over. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following statements is or correct about Ambedkar Social Innovation Incubation Mission? It is an initiative of Ministry of Social Justice. It promotes entrepreneurship among the SC youth with special preference to Divyangs. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is both. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following hills are found where the Eastern Ghats and Western Ghats meet? Is it Annamalai Hills, Cardamom Hills, Nilgiri Hills or Chevron Hills? The answer to this is Nilgiri Hills. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements. In India, the Himalayas are spread over 5 states only. Western Ghats are spread over 5 states only. Pulicat Lake is spread over 2 states only. Which of the statements given above is correct? The answer to this is 3 only. Why? Because Himalayas are spread over more than 5 states and Western Ghats are spread over 6 states and it is not 5 states. Why have we taken both these practice questions? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, where Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats meet, we have the Nilgiri Hills, and when it comes to the Western Ghats, it passes through 6 states in India. Now let's look into the mains practice question. India has set a very healthy precedent in its relationship with Maldives in more recent years than was possible earlier. Examine. Discuss the key differences between the Election Commission of India and the Federal Election Commission of the United States of America. So please write all your answers on the comment section, peer review, and also come up with constructive criticism. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.